close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath. Tonight, we travel far into the frozen lands of ancient Scandinavia, a place where endless snow covered the mountains, where mighty longships crossed dangerous seas, where legends were born beneath the dancing northern lights. This is not merely a story of war. It is a story of courage, loyalty, destiny, and one young king whose name would echo through history long after his final battle. His people called him King Leif, the last Viking king. As the cold northern wind whispers through the forests, our journey begins.
The kingdom of Nordheim rested quietly beside a frozen sea. Every morning, before the sun touched the mountains, the sounds of axes striking wood echoed throughout the village. Warriors trained tirelessly, preparing for battles that could come at any moment. Among them lived a young prince named Leif. Unlike other children, Leif never dreamed of treasure. He dreamed of becoming a protector. His father, King Harald, was known as one of the wisest Viking rulers. He often reminded his son, "A true Viking does not fight because he loves war. He fights because he loves those standing behind him." Those words stayed in Leif's heart. Every sunrise, he practiced with a wooden sword until his hands bled. He learned to sail through violent storms, to climb frozen cliffs, to hunt deep inside snowy forests, and most importantly, to never abandon a friend. Years passed. The little prince became stronger, faster, and wiser than anyone expected. Even the oldest warriors whispered among themselves, "The gods have chosen this boy." Yet, far beyond the northern sea, dark forces had already begun to awaken. A shadow was coming, one that would soon change Leif's life forever. Winter had become unusually silent. Even the ravens no longer sang above the village. The elders believed silence was never a blessing. It was always a warning. One cold evening, an old traveler arrived in Nordheim. His face was hidden beneath a gray wolf cloak, his eyes brighter than fire. Without speaking to anyone, he walked directly toward Prince Leif. The villagers watched in complete silence. The old man placed a weathered hand upon Leif's shoulder. Then he whispered, "Beyond the frozen sea, the sword of Valhalla waits for its true king." Before Leif could ask another question, the stranger disappeared into the heavy snowfall. No footprints remained. King Harald immediately gathered the village elders. They all recognized the ancient prophecy, a sword created by the gods themselves, hidden somewhere beyond the northern ocean. Legend said only one warrior could awaken its power. Not the strongest, not the richest, but the one willing to sacrifice everything. That night, Leif stood alone beside the frozen sea. The northern lights danced above the mountains. For the first time, he questioned his destiny. Was he truly chosen, or would the prophecy destroy everyone he loved? The freezing wind answered only with silence. At sunrise, King Harald made his decision. 3 legendary longships, 50 fearless warriors, and his only son would sail into the unknown. No Viking knew whether they would ever return. As the village gathered beside the shore, Leif looked back one final time. His mother smiled through tears. His father simply nodded. No words were needed. Every Viking understood. Some journeys change history forever. The sea welcomed no one. Towering waves struck the wooden ships with relentless force. Each crash echoed like thunder across the frozen ocean. Days turned into weeks. The sun disappeared behind endless storm clouds. Food became scarce. Fresh water froze inside wooden barrels. Some warriors began losing hope. Others whispered that Odin himself was testing their courage. Every night, Leif remained awake, standing alone at the front of the ship, watching the endless darkness. One evening, A violent storm unlike anything they had ever seen descended upon them. Lightning split the sky. The sea roared like a giant beast. One of the 3 longships disappeared beneath a mountain of waves. Its warriors vanished into the icy depths. No cries, no final words, only silence. The survivors continued forward. Turning back was no longer an option. On the 7th morning after the great storm, the fog slowly lifted. Far beyond the horizon, a black island appeared. Its cliffs rose high above the sea. Ancient stone pillars guarded its shores. Strange glowing runes shimmered across the rocks. Even the wind seemed afraid to enter this forgotten land. An old warrior quietly whispered, "We have found the island of the gods." Leif stepped onto the frozen beach. His boots touched untouched snow. No human footprints, no signs of life, only mystery. Then, far inside the mountains, a faint blue light began to glow. It pulsed like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Without speaking, Leif tightened his grip on his sword. The true journey had only just begun.
The towering stone doors groaned as they slowly opened. A freezing wind rushed from the darkness within. Leif stepped inside. His footsteps echoed across the silent temple floor. The walls were covered with ancient carvings, stories of forgotten Viking kings, heroes who had given everything to protect their people. At the center of the temple stood a magnificent sword. It rested upon a black stone altar. Its blade shimmered with an ethereal blue light. No dust covered it, as though time itself had never touched the weapon. One by one, the warriors approached. Each man reached for the sword. Each man failed. Some could not even move it. Others were thrown backward by an unseen force. Fear spread across the chamber. Then, Leif walked forward alone. He closed his eyes. He remembered his father's words. A true king protects before he conquers. Slowly, he placed his hand upon the sword's hilt. For a single heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the entire temple trembled. The glowing runes burst into brilliant light. A deep thunder echoed through the mountains. The sword accepted its king. Blue flames danced across the blade. The air itself seemed alive. Outside, the northern lights illuminated the night sky brighter than ever before. Far across the sea, dark eyes watched from the shadows. The enemy now knew. The last Viking king had claimed the sword of Valhalla, and war was coming.
The morning sky was silent. A thick blanket of snow covered the valley of Nordheim. Across the frozen battlefield, an army unlike anything the Vikings had ever seen stretched to the horizon. Thousands of enemy warriors stood ready. Black banners danced in the icy wind. King Leif stepped forward. The glowing sword of Valhalla rested firmly in his hand. Its blue light reflected across the snow like the rising dawn. He looked into the eyes of his people. No fear, only determination. Leif raised his sword toward the heavens. "My brothers, today we do not fight for glory. We fight for our families, for our children, for our home. If today becomes our final sunrise, let history remember that free men stood together." The valley erupted. Thousands of Viking shields slammed together. The sound echoed through the mountains. The charge had begun. Axes collided with swords. Snow turned crimson beneath the warriors' feet. The sky disappeared beneath smoke and flying arrows. The sword of Valhalla shone brighter with every step Leif took. Wherever he fought, hope followed. The enemy commander finally rode forward. He wore black iron armor and carried a massive battle axe. The two kings met in the center of the battlefield. For a moment, everything became silent. Steel clashed. Again and again. The duel seemed endless. Then, Leif remembered every lesson his father had taught him. Strength alone could never win.
wisdom would. As the enemy swung one final time, Leif stepped aside. The glowing blade flashed like lightning. One perfect strike. The enemy king fell. Silence swept across the battlefield. Then, the enemy army slowly lowered its weapons. The battle was over. Nordheim had survived. The prophecy was fulfilled. King Leif had become more than a warrior. He had become a legend. Years later, travelers still spoke of the last Viking king, not because he possessed the greatest sword, but because he carried the greatest heart. And on quiet winter nights, when the northern lights dance above the frozen fjords, some say you can still see the spirit of King Leif standing upon the cliffs, watching over his people forever. Sleep peacefully, for every great legend lives on in the hearts of those who remember. Good night.
If you enjoyed tonight's Viking legend, please leave a like, subscribe for more relaxing historical bedtime stories, and tell us in the comments.
you.